Is there some pain points to running your own servers?
Oh, plenty. There's pain points to operating computers of all kind. Have you tried just using a personal computer these days? Half the time when my kids or my wife have a problem, I go have you tried turning it just off and on again? Computers are inherently painful to humans. Owning your own computer, though, kind of makes some of that pain worth it. There's a responsibility that comes with actually owning the hardware that, to me, at least, make the burden of operating that hardware seem slightly more enjoyable. Now, there are things you have to learn, certainly at our scale, too. I mean, we're not just buying a single computer and plugging it into an Ethernet. We have to have racks and racks of them, and you got to set it up with network cabling, and there is some specialized expertise in that. But it's not like that expertise is like building nuclear rockets. It's not widely distributed. Literally, the entire internet was built on people knowing how to plug in a computer to the internet, right? Oh, Ethernet cable goes here, power cable goes here, let's boot up Linux. That's how everyone put anything online until 10, 12 years ago when the cloud sort of took over. So the expertise is there and can be rediscovered. You too can learn how to operate a Linux computer.
Yeah, and it's, when you get a bunch of them, there's a bunch of flashing LEDs, and it's just so exciting.
Beautiful, calming, amazing. Computers are really fun. This is actually something I've gotten into even deeper after we moved out of the cloud. Now my next kind of tingle is that if you could move out of the cloud, can you also move out of the data center? Personal servers have gotten really scarily quick and efficient, and personal internet connections rival what we connected data centers with just a decade or two ago. So there's a whole community around this concept of home lapping, which is essentially installing server hardware in your own apartment, connecting it to the internet, and exposing that directly to the internet. That harks back to those glorious days of the 90s when people building for the internet would host the actual website on their actual computer in the closet. And I'm pretty fired up about that. I'm doing a bunch of experiments. I've ordered a bunch of home servers for my own apartment. I marvel at the fact that I can get a 5 gigabit fiber connection now. I think, do you know what? 5 gigabit, that could have taken Basecamp to multiple millions of MRR in the way that back then I ran the whole business on a single box with 2004 technology and probably 100 megabit cable. Like the capacity we have access to, both in terms of compute and connectivity, is something that people haven't readjusted to. And this happens sometimes in technology where progress sneaks up on you. This happened with SSDs. I love that, by the way. We designed so much of our technology and storage approach and database design around spinning metal disks that had certain seek rate properties. And then we went to NVMe and SSDs, and it took quite a while for people to realize that the systems had to be built fundamentally different now, that the difference between memory and disk was now far smaller when you weren't spinning these metal plates around with a little head that had to read off them. You were essentially just dealing with another type of memory. I think we're a little bit in that same phase when it comes to the capacity of new businesses to be launched literally out of your damn bedroom.
So you can get pretty far with a large user base with home labbing.
Absolutely.
That's exciting. That's like the old school. That's really exciting.
It's bringing back the startup in the garage in the literal physical sense of the word. Now, some of that is, do we need to? You can get relatively cheap cloud capacity if you don't need very much.
Hell yes, we need to. I mean, the feeling of doing that by yourself, of seeing the LED lights in your own home. I mean, there's nothing like that.
There's just an aesthetic to it that I am completely in love with and I want to try to push on. Now, is that going to be the same thing as getting out of the cloud? I'm not sure. Our exit out of the cloud was not the exit out of the data center. We basically just bought hardware, shipped it to a professionally managed data center that we didn't even actually touch. This is the other misconception people have about moving out of the cloud, that we have a bunch of people who are constantly driving to a data center somewhere to rack new boxes and change dead RAM. That's not how things happen in the modern world at all. We have a company called Summit, previously Deft, that is what we call white gloves. They work in the data center. When we need something like, hey, Deft, Can you go down and swap the dead SSD in box number 6?
Mhm.
They do it. And what we see is akin to what someone working with the cloud would see. You see IP addresses coming online, you see drives coming online. It's not that different, but it is a whole heck of a lot cheaper when you are operating at our scale. And of course it is. Of course it's cheaper to own things if you need those things for years rather than it is to rent it. In no other domain would we confuse those two things, that it's cheaper to own for the long duration than it is to rent.
There is some gray area, like I've gotten a chance to interact with the XAI team a bunch. I'm probably going back out there in Memphis to do a big podcast associated with the Grok release. And those folks, in order to achieve the speed of building up the cluster and to solve some of the novel aspects that have to do with the GPU, with the training, they have to be a little bit more hands-on. It's a little less white glove.
Oh, and I love that, right? They're dealing with a frontier problem, and they're dealing with it not by renting a bunch of GPUs at a huge markup from their main competitor. They're going like, no, screw that. We're going to put 100,000 GPUs in our own tents, right? And build it in absolute record time. So I think, if anything, this is testament to the idea that owning hardware can give you an advantage, both at the small scale, at the medium scale, and at the pioneer levels of computing.